everybody. I'm very excited today to have Sam Lee, the MD of Tempe Restaurants, with us. Sam, thank you so much for making time to speak.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
So Sam, dying to get into ask you some questions about operating excellence and the way you run your business. But just for those that maybe haven't enjoyed Tempe yet, would you just mind talking a bit about the concept and what people would expect if they came to dine at one of your places?
Yeah, of course. So we are whole animal butchery. So we do all of the butchery for the meat in-house. We've got a number of butchers that work across the sites, and our kitchens are central to the restaurant. So they're not out the back, so you can see all of your food being prepared in front of you. And it's great because you can interact with the chefs. You can talk to them about the produce, probably not so much on a Friday and Saturday night, but it's it's really sort of an immersive experience. So you really get to sort of experience the whole process of your food being made.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide, is there, in your concept?
No.
I'm going to dig into the concept a bit more in a second, but just be interested for people to understand how you sort of built up some of your operating philosophy. Excluding Tempe, where's the best operating environment that you ever worked in, and what made it great?
So I used to be COO for a company called Convivial Pubs, and their owner was a guy called Chris Gumbrell. And he was always very inclusive, and he was always very present. So there was never a question that couldn't be asked. There was never a query that was too much. He would really explain the process and explain why he was doing things and taking certain decisions. And you just felt like you were part of something that you understood, that you truly believed in, and that you could really contribute to. And it didn't matter what level you were. You know, he welcomed contributions from everybody within the business. You know, he saw us all as stakeholders, really, but he didn't just demonstrate that himself. You really felt it when you were in the business.
Is that Chris that's at Brewhouse and Kitchen now?
Yeah.
I love them. Yeah, and he's gone on to create an amazing culture there as well. Actually, Mark McFadden, who's the ops director at Brewhouse and Kitchen, is part of this series, and it's really interesting how they've institutionalized that culture. So what a lovely story. Yeah. That's obviously where you've learned good from. What would you say are some of the biggest learning moments from your career?
I think I always try not to be any of the terrible bosses that I have had. And instead of trying to think about them as people, think about the behaviors that I don't want to exhibit. Don't always manage it. But I think sometimes when you are not inclusive, or when you create a divide between you and your exec team and the rest of the team, like an us and them. I've worked in some companies where it's been, some people have been terribly important and the rest of us haven't. And I think that makes for a dreadful culture. I really do, because at the end of the day, it is your team and the people that are in that kitchen and on that floor, customer facing, that are making the money. That is the truth, and we're investor back. That's really important that we get that bit right. So it's I think for me, it's just trying to be all the things that made me feel good about where I worked, and trying to not demonstrate some of the behaviours that didn't make me feel so good.
Have you ever found yourself slipping into some of those values, like into those sort of anti-value behaviours? And what's an example of one that maybe you have to sort of check yourself for?
Well, yes, every single day. And I just try and keep those conversations in my head now and not let that stuff come out of my mouth. That's always helpful. But I think making sure that you listen and really hear. I kind of remind myself every day that, just listen to what people are telling you. And remember, when you're communicating, that the message is for the recipient. So just because I've understood it and I know what I mean, check back and make sure people are confident to sort of go forward with the information they've got. And just recognizing that when you're busy, that's when you have to check in with yourself the most, because it's so easy to not be patient. I've got zero patience. Anybody that knows me will know I've got I don't want to buy a sofa and wait 60 days. I want to buy it today and have it delivered before I get home. I don't, so I have no patience at all for anything. So I do remind myself to, be patient and pause. Just stop, think, take stock before you react.
That's amazing. I mean, I think people don't realise, if you haven't had much leadership experience, particularly if you've not founded something where companies then end up taking on all of your best and worst characteristics, don't realise what an unnatural act leading is. right? Like it does require some practice to be your best self.
And I have a 14-year-old, and I would consider myself, you know, fairly in control, and she says, with no narcissism intended, you know, a good leader. But I find myself just doing things to get rid of a situation at home. And I just think, how can I have my job and be so rubbish at it at home? So it's, you know, yeah, it has its moments.
Look, I run a communication company and routinely miscommunicate. Like it's really hard, you know, like because I like people, I get carried away. And I'm talking to the folks in front of me, and I can forget how many people there are in the organization and who's not in the room when we're having the conversation. And I spend every day talking about being inclusive across all of your sites. And often the customers' businesses are much bigger than mine, and I get it wrong. I think it's part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
Anti-values is something I've been asking people about on this series. I don't know if you've ever given any thought to this. It sounds like you have from the answer you just gave. I don't know if your business has sort of stated positive values, but when we talk to people across the sectors, I think some like hard charging, impatient operators feel like sort of positive values are a bit soft and cuddly. And so actually they find it easier to define what they stand against to then get to what they stand for. Would you mind just taking us into what some of your anti-values are, as in things that just wouldn't be stood for in a Sam Lee team?
Yeah, so we don't have any isms. Anything that ends in an ism just doesn't get discussed. It isn't a thing. You know, it's being respectful to one another consistently. We're very lucky. We have a lovely lady called Cece that looks after all of our HR and training. So we spend a lot of time making sure people understand what working at Tempe is and what our values and our ethos is. And we expect them to maintain that. And everybody has a bad day, everybody slips now and again. So we do operate very much in the real world, but we are very quick to take action against anybody that is not respectful and does not behave as the exec behave. And we, as an exec, there's 4 of us, we spend a lot of our time being very mindful about how we behave and how we demonstrate behaviors in the business. And, you know, we've all agreed that there are conversations that need to be had. They're always had away from the business, and we have a very sort of open communication policy, but that goes nowhere else. You know, we make sure that when we're present and in the business that we're demonstrating those values. And if we don't, we're very quick to pull each other up. And as are they quick to pull me up. I've had where, oh yeah, make no mistake, I have had situations where I've had a phone call afterwards or in the middle of a meeting, somebody said, you know, no, Sam, that's a no. But I want them to feel, I think one of the tricks to being a good leader, and certainly being to a successful business person, is to surround yourself with people that are far better than you could ever hope to be. I always say I'm brilliant at only 2 things: knowing what I'm not brilliant at, and people. So I just make sure the people that are in my team could do a far better job than me. And I'm a business person, not a chef. As would be testified by a lot of people. And it's our chef director, you know, I trust him implicitly to get on with what he does. He's very inclusive and makes sure the communication is always there. But in turn, that allows him to be a good leader. Same with Michael, our ops director. You know, he runs his team. I've got absolute trust that he will do that as long as he communicates and I know what's going on and I'm in touch with the business. There's no point me trying to do that because that's not my job anymore.
How did you come up with the values, if that's something that runs so sort of strongly through your operating philosophy?
We didn't sit down and come up with a list, to be honest. We came up with, well, we didn't come up, there was a culture that I've been obviously with the business since the start, and some of the guys have been there maybe 4 years, 3 years. And for me, it's about the culture, that there are values, and when that slips, we know that our value system is slipping. And we ask people at interview, you know, it's not just a list of what you're good at for that job. It's okay, tell us about your family, tell us about a little bit about you, because it's, you know, it's making sure they're the right fit for us and we're the right fit for them. And we've had situations where we've had absolutely fantastic candidates for a position, but just in that interview, you know, that value piece and that relationship piece just hasn't been there, so we haven't taken them.
Have you held the line on that recently with the sort of
Yeah.
It's not even just a war for talent, is it? I mean, it's a crisis. How difficult have you found it to maintain cultural standards in this environment?
Not difficult at all, because I think if anything, they've been heightened, because it's so easy for staff to leave, go somewhere else for, you know, an extra £1 an hour, or for you know, for a benefit that perhaps we don't have in our salary packages. So I think, if anything, it's been heightened, because it's never been more important to treat your staff well, and to, you know, for retention, because it is a tricky recruitment market at the minute.
Do you make a big piece of the sort of the values when you're trying to attract people into the top of the talent pipeline, or is it something that you allow sort of all comers, and then you look for those sort of special characteristics in them once they turn up?
The discussion's definitely had, but I think we have a really robust training program, and we talk about that. And within that training program is things like our ethos, our values, how we expect people to behave, the training we give them to enable them to do their job. So they understand that there is a process in place. But I think we're very, Cece, who does the interviews, you know, she's very straightforward. If you ever meet Cece, there's no mistaking what's expected at all. So it's kind of a given for us that on day one, when somebody starts, they've already passed the CC test.
That's really cool. So actually, you're really looking for raw potential, actually, because you're going to invest in, as long as they're good human beings, you'll invest in allowing them to become their best self with you.
Yeah, and we've taken, and again, some of this is born of the recruitment market at the minute, but we've taken people with no experience at all, but that personality piece, that value piece, we believe is there. And I don't think you can train that. You can't instill that into somebody. I do believe you're either that type of person or you're not. It's almost impossible to mask that throughout, you know, your whole working day or your whole working evening, as it is with our guys. So I would rather train somebody to be, you know, a waiter, a runner, start their career as a chef, but they've got those values, than the other way around, have somebody that's absolutely fantastically well trained, but just doesn't meet with our cultural requirements. And yeah, my son at home, it's one really simple rule, which you have to be a bit careful with at work because of the HR thing, but just don't be a prat. Just don't be, I'd use a different word, but I'm in company, so I'll be polite. But as long as you stick to that rule, you're probably going to be okay. You're probably doing things the right way. So if you ever want to know if you've wandered off the beaten track, just ask yourself, am I being a bit of a, you know, a wazzock, as we say at night?
But creating a culture where people can call you out for that, no matter where you are in the organisation, is not easy. A lot of people, despite claiming to be straight talking, have not created cultures where there is that ability to give the boss feedback about living up to his or her own standards. So kudos. Operating strategies for, say, this year coming out of COVID, like without divulging any trade secrets, yeah. Like what is your operating strategy for the year? What are the things you're focusing on at the moment?
We'd definitely like to get bigger as a business. We'd like some more restaurants. I think COVID set everybody back, you know, sort of at least 18 months. And it's been an unusual year, to say the least, in that it's been a bit stop-start. And we've been very lucky to some extent that we've got restaurants that aren't in the city. So we have, people have been very keen to get back into hospitality environments, which has been great. Obviously, the recruitment issue means that we've had the odd Monday where there's been no lunch session or evening session, which has been disappointing. But we've sort of reignited our strategy for growth, which is important. And you know, there are some great sites out there, and the businesses that we're looking at are London centric, so we were able to move a little bit quicker. So fingers crossed, we will be able to realise that part of our strategy, and just really to continue around the education piece. When we were in lockdown, we did a lot of training, a lot of development for the staff. We found that the staff were desperate to get out, and one of the things the government did do was say, if you're training, you can go into your workplace. So we did quite a lot of training courses, and you know, there's a real thirst for knowledge within our team. So we've kind of embraced that, and CC's written some fantastic training programs along with David and Michael. So we've you know, we really want to expand that this year for people that want to develop. I mean, I've got lots of friends in the recruitment world, and I'd rather not give them my money. I'd rather just go and have a beer with them. So we've got a big push on recruiting from within as well, because as we grow as a business, we want to make sure that you know, the security of the business is there. So it's, there's nothing like being able to promote somebody from within. I think that sends one, a really great message, but two, it allows people just to see firsthand, what hard work can achieve.
Totally. I agree, promoting people from within is preferable for lots of reasons. But of course, there has been a lot of churn and change in the sector. So there's going to be a whole bunch of people watching this and this series that are new in post. As a sort of business-oriented hospitality executive, entrepreneur, what would your advice be for somebody that's new in post that wants to make a big operational impact? Like, how would you spend the first, say, 60 days going into a new business in the sector?
I think I touched on it earlier. Just pause, listen, observe, understand why a business is in the position it's in. So either tremendously successful or perhaps needing some TLC in certain sectors. But I think it's just about understanding why a business is where it is, and then finding who your advocates are and who are the people that can contribute. And then again, that recruitment piece, making sure you've got the right people in the right place. I was asked to go and speak at a school not so long ago, and it was interesting that the perception of hospitality away from hospitality is that it's just waiters and waitresses. Because I guess if you're not in the business, your exposure to it is when you go to a restaurant and you only interact with the people that you see, which in a restaurant is quite often only front of house, a little bit different for us, and it is the waiters and the lady that takes your coat or the guy that takes you to your seat. And really explaining to people that hospitality is far more than that. I mean, my FD is fantastic. He's doing the job he loves in the hospitality sector. I would like to think earning a decent salary and, having some fun at work, but doing the job he trained to do in the financial sector. So it's having people understand that actually hospitality is a really, really broad sector. And somebody said to me not so long ago, yeah, but I bet your lot can't afford to buy their own houses. And it's quite funny because I have a mission to get everybody on the property ladder if they want to. But, two of my GMs have just bought their first houses and really nice ones, may I add. So it's really nice to be able to say to people, actually, the people you interact with in the restaurant, they do buy their own homes. I know it's not the same for everybody, and I do understand that, but hospitality is a really exciting, vibrant place to be. And you don't just have to be one particular stereotype to work there. There's lots of different things that you can do within hospitality.
That's such an uplifting, inspiring message, given what the sector's been through over the last couple of years. I mean, it's true, isn't it? The hospitality sector, it can be a hard place to work at times, but difficult to think of a more meritocratic environment that you can work in, where you can go from the front line to pretty much wherever you want to go, and you can be running quite a significant P&L quite young, actually. I mean, I started my career in professional services, and you couldn't rise as meteorically in that world as you can in hospitality, even though lots of working and middle-class parents want their kids to go into professional services. It's a real tragedy. It's awesome that you're fighting a good fight on that front.
And you've got to be really smart. You've got to be financially apt. You've got to understand your numbers. You've got to have impeccable standards. You've got to be a good leader. You've got to be able to manage people. You have to have an understanding of legislation, local authority. You have to interact with just about every type of personality on the planet. That's hard. There's not many people can do it. So I take my hat off to the guys that work for me, because they do a great job. And I think restaurants now, restaurants have most of my money because I've not been able to give it to airlines. But it's great. I love going into restaurants, getting great food, great service, but just seeing people happy in their job. And I just wish that the people that are perhaps not as, I can't think of the word, but just not as willing to give it a go and to understand that, hospitality is a fantastic career.
Yeah, amazing. I want you to check your web traffic, particularly the careers page, after this conversation goes out to Propel and other viewers, because I do not believe you'll have any problem attracting aspiring managers to come join the Tempe mission. Sammy, thank you so much for making the time to do this. It's been an amazing conversation.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.